Hey, today we're going to give you some basic houseplant care tips. Join us.
The Lindsey Coralee Show, not long ago. We're vet techs now retired. The Lindsey Coralee Show, and now they go to what the F that they desire. The fabric snobs, but they're not snobs. Just fabric tends to rouse them. The Lindsey Coralee Show, they like to sew. There's nothing cool about them.
Hey, I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Coralee.
Welcome back to the Lindsey Coralee Show.
Oh yeah.
So today we're exploring my love, one of my loves, I have many loves, houseplants.
Da, 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 da.
My children like to tell me I have too many. I don't believe that's a thing,
So does her husband.
but they're fantastic. So let's learn how to care for them.
I'm ready to learn because I really like outside and she likes inside plants. So I'm hoping that she will now combat my once a week watering and now I'll understand why my plants aren't growing.
There we go. Let's do it. So today we're just covering basic plant care tips. I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't sure what to do with their plants, and I hope that I can clear up some confusion today. We're not going to go totally in depth. I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but let's just cover some really, really basic things. So plants need two main things to survive: light and water. They also can use a little bit of fertilizer in their soil as well, but light and water are the main ways they get food. Light, they get their food from light through photosynthesis, and water helps facilitate that process. So let's tackle light first. You want to know, when you're getting a plant, you want to know how much light it needs, whether it's full sun, moderate light, or low light. So when we talk about low light, a lot of people don't know this, but low light is not a room with no windows. Plants cannot survive without windows for a long term. They're not thriving. They're just, if you think your plant is doing really well in a room that has no windows, it is just graciously and beautifully dying. So we want to make sure that our plants have the access to the light that they need. You do need to know what your plant is and to know how much light it needs. For example, this is a marble queen pothos, and pothos are really good at surviving in low light situations. And what we mean by a low light situation is, say, not in direct light and not in a window. So it can survive in a room that has a window. As long as the room has a window, it's good. How much the plant grows and thrives is based on how much light it gets. So you'll notice if a plant is further away from the light, it won't grow quite as fast. It won't use water up as much because it doesn't need light. So if you're finding that your plants are not growing at all, they might need a little bit more light. There is some plants that are just slow growing and it doesn't matter where you have them, like a snake plant. They take forever to grow. I have an app for my phone called Picture This. So I can take a picture of the plant. If you're unsure of what kind of plant it is, you can take a picture of the plant and it'll help you identify it by showing you other plants that look like it. Sometimes it's not accurate, but most of the time it is. Hopefully where you bought the plant has labeled it so you do know what it is, but sometimes, especially if you buy it at a big box store, they'll just say like assorted tropical plant. So first you want to look up what the plant is and to look up the care that it needs. How much water it needs, how much light it needs. So once you figure out that and find a place in your home to put that plant, then it's time to figure out a watering schedule. So a lot of people just water their plants once a week, and I want you to forget that idea because overwatering is the most common killer of plants, not underwatering, overwatering. So we don't want to overwater our plants. Most plants, like as a general rule of thumb, need their soil to dry out before they're watered again. If you are watering them too much, that'll cause root rot and the plant will die. We have a couple plants here today that need a little bit of work that I'll show you how I care for them. So this is a Calathea White Fusion, and it is losing some leaves, which is a natural process. Like, they are live plants, they will shed leaves. It's the fall, or it's winter now, and that's normal for them to drop a couple leaves as long as the overall plant is looking healthy and it's still standing up nicely and vibrant. So the first thing that we want to do when we're watering is we want to check the moisture level. If the soil is pulling away from the sides of the pot, then you know for sure. If the pot is feeling light, then you know there's not enough water in there. But my favorite way, and super inexpensive, is to use a hydrometer. This is around $15 to $20 at a garden store, on Amazon, all over the place. And all you do is just stick it into your soil, and you can see. So this probably won't show up, but this one is showing up as dry. So we definitely, and you want to get right to the bottom of that. This is showing up as dry, so we're going to need to water this one today. This one also needs top dressing. The soil is just a little bit too low, so we're going to add some soil to this one as well, and we're going to water it. This hydrometer is a great tool, and you'll be shocked how little some of your plants need water. And like I said, if you feel that one plant, it's too wet for too long, the best way to remedy that is to get it into a bright source of light, so it can photosynthesize faster and use up that water quicker and dry out the plant, so we're not risking root rot. So I always water mine I always water my plants when they're like in the red, in the dry part. Other than that, I don't. So the third thing plants need is a little bit of fertilizer. I love plant vitamins, and I use this. This is Thrive. This is the one that's made to use in every second watering. So it's 1 ml per 1 liter. So I just put, this is like a 2 liter container. So I'll put 2 mLs in here and fill it up, and just water all of my plants that need water with that every second watering. So they don't need it every watering, but it just helps to provide them with the nutrients they need, because they can leach the nutrients out of the soil and we'll need to replace that. I just ran out, but they also have a product called Boost that's like a once every 6 months, or when you transplant or first bring them home, that just gives that plant that extra boost they need. Sometimes when you bring a plant home, they'll go into shock, so just a different climate. So sometimes you'll see them drop leaves or look droopy, and some people just want to remedy that by watering them. But again, we don't want to water them too much. They often come from the greenhouses really wet, so they just need time to acclimatize. As long as they have the light that they need, then they just need a little bit of time. So let's deal with my Calathea White Fusion to start. I actually ordered this plant online, and it was probably a third of the size when I got it in the spring, and it's grown incredibly since. But it is starting to have some leaves that don't look too great. So because this plant needs a little bit of top dressing, it is starting, some older leaves are getting brown. So we just want to cut any damaged leaves off. If you're leaving the damaged leaves on, it's just sucking the energy out of the plant to try to keep those leaves alive, and it'll hinder it from growth. So just trim those off, trim them away, and the overall plant can grow back better and healthier. So we'll do that. There we go. Sometimes it feels a little bit painful to clip things off because your plant does overall look thinner, but it is best for the long-term health of your plant to do that. Another thing you can use this moisture meter for, that some people use a chopstick for, is just aerating your plants. They also need to be aerated. Sometimes if they're in a pot for a long time, they can become compacted, and it's really hard for them to get thoroughly watered, evenly watered. So I just poke around in that soil and break it up, so the water can go through there equally. We also need to top dress this because the soil is really, really low and the root bulbs are starting to stick out a little bit, and that's why this plant isn't doing so well. So all I'm going to do is just add some soil to the top, and then I'm going to water it. For soil, I just use a mix that they recommended from the greenhouse, and I can't remember. Just ask whatever your local store has for tropical plants. You don't want to use soil from the garden. I've made that mistake, and they do not thrive. These ones have fertilizer put into them, and also some perlite and stuff mixed in, so the soil doesn't get too compacted and it's more aerated. So I usually leave, I don't ever fill it right up to the brim. I usually leave about an inch, half inch at the top, so when you're watering it doesn't spill over the sides. But this looks good, and I think this plant is going to be really happy and healthy with this. So I'm just going to water this plant while we're at it. I'm going to do my 1 ml. It usually takes about 4 squirts because it doesn't fill right up to the 1 ml. And I just use tap water. We'll fill that up. Okay, we've got our water with a little bit, and I'm just going to water this plant a little. And it kind of takes some time to realize how much they need. You'll get the vibe of your plant as you water it, but try not to overdo it, and you can always let it sit for a little bit, and we'll test the moisture after it sits for a few minutes. So this plant, I would say, is like moderate. It's pretty easy to take care of, not too bad. This one needs a little bit of water spritzing. So I have this little mister. You can get super cute ones at your local greenhouse or again on Amazon. And a lot of the thinner leaves need this. If you're seeing that they're getting brown, or your humidity is not very high in your house, or it's winter where humidity is usually low, it's good to spritz your plants, just to mist your plants, to keep them nice and hydrated. And here we have a little succulent. These are very, very easy to take care of. Do not need a ton of light. Still need light, still need to be in a room that has a window or has natural light, but do not need to be watered very often at all. The most common killer of succulents is overwatering. So again, test that moisture. I'm feeling this soil's a bit compacted and it's very dry, and it's really light, so I know that it needs water. We'll just add a little bit, give it him a little fresh drink. There we go. He's probably good for a month, honestly, if not more. So here we have one of my more precious plants that I find is a little bit harder to take care of. So I kind of had an easy, a medium, and one that I feel is more difficult. I have trouble keeping Chinese evergreens alive. This is a Chinese evergreen, or a Aglaonema pictum tricolor. It's a camouflage one that I ordered from somebody in BC, and it shipped to me, and it's a very precious one. And I have trouble keeping the Chinese evergreens alive though. I have the basic colored ones and they do really well, but these fun colored ones, I've had one die, and this one is not super thriving, although it is growing a new leaf there. I'm just trying to figure out how to keep it alive. This leaf's probably dying. I'm going to need to cut it off, but that hurts so bad to cut off a leaf of a really precious plant. But I'm still learning how to take care of this particular one. I have this one in my grow frame, which has LED light to provide it with more light, so it has enough and it can grow nice and healthy. So this one also is super dry. I still have it. I actually repotted this into a nursery pot because it has really good drainage. Some people like to repot into their nice fancy pots and just make sure there's a good, well-draining soil in there. Or some people will just take these nursery pots and put them inside of the decorative pots. Up to you how you want to. If you have something that needs to be bottom watered, which I'm going to bottom water this one, you'll want to keep them in the nursery pots so you have those holes on the bottom to water from. So again, this one, I'm just going to test it just in case. I can feel it's dry, it's very, very light, and I can tell the soil's kind of crumbling. And I know that it's not going to hold the water as well. This one also needs a little bit of top dressing soil too. I'm just going to grab a bowl and place it into there. So there's two ways to water. We top watered this one. That's just normally how you water plants, by pouring water over the top. And then there's bottom watering. So with bottom watering, I'm just going to do a little bit on the top. Oops, spilt it. And then I'm just going to fill this bowl with water, and I'm going to let that sit for like an hour, and it'll suck up the water. And if you see that it's getting empty, add more to the bowl, because then it'll hydrate as well as it needs to. Like I said, still need to add a little bit of top dressing because it's getting the roots showing just a little bit too much and I want to protect them. So I'm going to add a little bit of soil to there as well. Decomposing leaf, that looks super cool. And then I'm just slide this off to the side and let it do its thing, bottom watering till it's nice and hydrated. Another thing that you want to do for basic plant care is to wipe down the leaves. If they get dusty, a lot of mine are, this little mini fiddly fig is quite dusty. The dust affects their photosynthesis and they won't be able to feed themselves as well, so they won't be using up water as quickly and they won't be thriving if they have dust that's blocking the light. So I use a little mixture that I made. This mixture is water, a little bit of neem oil, and a little teensy bit of dish soap, and it's good for to keep pests off, but I also use it for leaves to give my leaves a nice wipe down. So I'll just, you can even spray it right onto the leaf. We'll tackle this fiddle right here. You can spray it right onto the leaf and just gently wipe it off. These fiddle leaf figs are fiddly. They live up their name. I've killed my big one because I don't think it had enough light, and then it was just too far gone by the time I moved it into full sun. So you just want to give them a nice gentle wipe down, holding the back of the leaf to get all that dust off. And there we go. So how do you know if your plant needs repotting? Plants can get root bound. Some plants like to be root bound, where they like when their roots are filling up the pot, but sometimes they get to the point where they're just too root bound and they can't hold water anymore. I have my very first plant up there that has thrived for 2 years. It's like growing vines all over the place, and this almost breaks my heart, but it's time to repot and cut it back. And I know that it's time because it's starting to drop leaves, which it never has done. So to repot that, I do need to trim the vines off because it's all wound around everything. So I'm just gonna cut it free, and then we can repot it into a little bit of a larger pot. Okay, got my new pot, slightly bigger than the one it's in, and this honestly is gonna hurt a little bit. It's been up there for over 2 years. Okay, also very dusty, needs to be wiped down, and just overall is looking kind of frumpy. This leaf is starting to yellow, so we're getting rid of that one. We want to start it off nice and healthy. Okay, so now I need to get it out of this pot. I can tell that it's like not much soil left and very dry, and I water it often, so it just needs a little bit more space. I'm going to use this to break up the soil a little bit to get the roots out. Multi-use tool, I'm telling you. Use it for all sorts of things. Being super careful not to damage the roots, but we do need to free them up from here. Okay. So, all that dryness tangled up, we're just going to gently maneuver and loosen up that soil so the fresh stuff can get in there. Not much of a root system for how big of a plant it is. It's really incredible. There we go, and now it's ready for its new pot. Those roots are really something else. Look at that. So I'm just going to make a hole in the center so those roots have lots of room to be tucked into. And when you are putting soil in here, this is really dry. Still can be used, But I know I have this wet stuff here, so I'm gonna put that in first. It's not quite enough, so I'll probably put this in here and use this water and mix it around and wet it before I put it back. Okay, there's some little water left over, so I'm just gonna add it. And that's all for replanting, and because it is so dusty, we're gonna use that little mix that we created. You can also you can buy stuff that's specifically for plant leaves. You can also take your plant to the shower and just shower it down. If it's a plant like this, like I have some like this that have so many leaves that it would take you forever to go and manually do it. So you can just take them to the shower, make sure they have good drainage in the pot that they're in so you're not drowning them, and just give them a good shower down. Some plants really love that. And there we go. Repotted my very first houseplant into a new pot. All right, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope I taught you a few things. If you have any questions, comments, anything else you'd like to see, let us know. Next time I'd love to tackle propagation, because it's one of the most fun things about having houseplants is making baby houseplants. So please like and subscribe so you never miss out on a Lindsey Coralee show or any of our tips, tricks, tutorials. Thanks for joining me. Take care.